Friend, if you are looking to start really creating goals that excite you and are in line with what you really want and what you really value, I'm excited for this episode. Today, I'm bringing back a guest, Samantha Kelgreen, and she is going to talk to us all about the importance, especially as ambitious women, to creating goals that are in line with our priorities and values and how that makes us more likely to achieve them, whether they're health goals, life goals, business goals, personal goals, whatever, right? So tune into the episode. Make sure you also check out the show notes or the blog post link to get details on following Samantha and all of her great stuff. And then as a reminder, if you are wanting some essential oils to support you in this season, I am doing a Kickstart Essential Oils series. And this part 2 is tonight on how to use oils in your everyday life. And so you can follow me on Instagram or sign up for the series. But then, I still also do coaching. So if you are interested in getting support from me in really this holistic, aspect of health, right? The mindset, the habits, the oils, the life area, please book a clarity call. And I would love to support you. Or if you can't find a time that works for you, message me and we can figure out what you most need and if I'm a great fit. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the episode, and I can't wait to hear how it was for you. You're listening to the Madewell Women podcast, and I am Brianna Wilkerson, your host. For over half my life, I really had to pay attention to my relationship with food, with my body, and with myself. As a young girl, I just started to find my worth in my weight and my work. And I really started to define my beauty, my body, and my value in all of those things. And that led to a very not healthy way of eating, not healthy way of taking care of myself. But when I started to realize that my worth was not in my weight and that healthy living did not have to be so depriving, but it could actually be joyful, that's when I found freedom and breakthrough. And it has been my mission ever since to help women do the same. So Madewell Women is about helping other women find peace with food, create healthy habits, and use essential oils confidently. So you're going to find solo episodes, you're going to find guest interviews from time to time, and really you're just going to find a space where I can talk to you from heart to heart, woman to woman, to really support you in creating your version of food freedom, finding healthy habits that support you in your life, and using essential oils to support you along the way. And as I mentioned, I'm an essential oils lover and I'm an advocate with doTERRA, and I really want to help more and more women in homes use essential oils for your health and for women's health, their family, and their homes. So I'm so glad you're here and so glad to support you. Before you go and listen to the episode, I want you to do a couple things. One, make sure you join the Madewell Women's Health community. This is a space where you can unpack these episodes and get support on your journey, as well as follow me on Instagram because I share all about behind the scenes of my own life there as well. All right, enjoy the episode, and I can't wait to get to know you more and support you. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited today. I am bringing back interviews. I've took a long break, and Samantha understands why. She's also pregnant and just really having to reassess like time-wise, but I'm so excited on this kind of as I prep for maternity leave to have Samantha here with us to talk about a topic that I just, we were talking about just how relating to moms and business around this, but just how to set goals that are in line with your values in the season you're in. And then how to set up your own version of success, particularly when it comes to your health. But again, this stuff can transfer to any other area in your life. So thanks so much for joining us today, Samantha.
I'm so happy to be here. And this really topic, which we decided on months ago, is like so perfect right now.
I know. And again, as you're saying, it can, apply to any area of your life. And so I would love for you, before we get started into that, just tell us a little bit about your story as it relates to your health and wellness journey, and then how that led you to kind of supporting women as a health and mindset coach.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Samantha. I had lived in Chicago for 10 years when I started coaching. I'm now in Asheville, North Carolina. But my time in Chicago, I really fell in love with running. So we start there for like the kind of health part. I became a marathon runner. I was a certified run coach. I got my health coaching certification there, my personal training certification. So was always kind of focused primarily working with women. That's what I understood. It's what, who I identify with. And really, I felt like I was marketing myself towards what I thought people wanted, which is weight loss, which is, healthier habits. These things are not bad at all, obviously. However, it's not my story. So I wasn't fully connecting. I feel like I was giving them the, hey, let's get you in. Like, this is what I can show you how to do. But my struggles weren't their struggles. Mine was kind of the opposite. I had trouble saying no to a run or, adding more calories in. I was more restrictive than I needed to be, especially marathon running. And so it was kind of this obsession where it's not, I think a lot of women fall into this. It's not an eating disorder, it's nothing categorized, but you're spending too much time thinking about food and how you're moving your body. And it becomes unhealthy because it's too much time and energy wasted on that. It's like I was too good at it. And so I really, it kind of came to a head when we went to get pregnant with our son, who's now 4. I wasn't getting a period. I went off the pill and had no period for like 3 months, nothing. And went to after going to my OB, went to a fertility specialist, and there was no uterine lining. So there's nothing to bleed out. And it's because of my running. I had such low body fat. I wasn't eating enough to support marathon running. And that is the first time that it made me really think, okay, this is something this is a red flag for my body, right? If I'm not getting a period, it's not just that I'm spending too much time, more than the average time, thinking about what to feed myself and how often to move. My body's saying it's not getting enough. So that really started me thinking of, okay, when I need to shift this, maybe run a little less, why is this so hard? Like, why do I feel lazy? So it was this huge kind of internal, I don't want to say struggle, but just a lot of questions came up for myself of why is this so important to me? What do my, body size mean to me and all of this? So worked through a lot of that. I put on 10 pounds. I cut back on my running. It felt comfortable. It was good. We did IVF, and I got pregnant. And that made it very easy. As you know, once you have a newborn and an infant, you don't have the time and space to spend that much energy, nor did I want to. Like, my priorities naturally shifted. However, then I found, okay, this kind of overachiever in me, we're talking about being that overachiever, this overachiever in me wants to be doing. Maybe it's not the running, but it is, what can I get done around the house? And I feel anxious if I'm not on go. And it's not from a calorie burn standpoint, it's from I don't want to feel lazy. I don't want to just sit back and rest. I need to be in action. And it was uncomfortable if I wasn't. So it made me look at that. I started talking about those feelings. That's when a lot of other women were like, yeah, I feel the same way. Right. It is very much, my self-worth is tied up to my to-do list. What did I get done? What did I check off? Kind of like I would say, like, show your work, here's what I did today. And I can go through the list and I can show you all the things that I did. But there was little focus on, well, how did today feel? Like, was I stressed because I'm running around the house? Or did I have a nice day that made me happy and I went on a longer walk? Or was I like, I need to get back by 9 a.m. to start XYZ? So I started talking to those people. And that's when I really found my people. That's when it really clicked of, oh, I help myself through this. I can help and support you through this.
So many aspects of your story. I'm like, oh yeah. I was like, I didn't have a period. Similarly, this happened when I was a teenager, because I was doing a lot of cardio, not eating enough, all that sort of stuff, lost it. I think it was attributed to like PCOS. It was attributed to all this, but I knew, I think I luckily went to a doctor that was like, you're not eating enough. And so that's definitely what's happening. And so, having to like be okay, but like having to be okay with eating more, gaining that little weight. And then similarly, it's like, I just feel like what you're saying, I resonate with, like finding our worth in our weight, but also finding it in our work. And so as women, whether you're at home, what you're saying, whether you're at home, just taking care of your kids, being around your house, or working, or you're trying to do things for your health, there's this thought process that happens where it's like, did I do enough today? Did I check enough off? And finding our worth in our work. And similarly, like, my goodness, it's like, now that I'm home more, I'm home with my daughter. I'm constantly like, did I fold the laundry? Did I do the dishes? But then one thing I'm learning, I don't know, you've probably learned this, like you can do all of that and then tomorrow you have to do it again because you have kids that are going to mess it up. And so if I was to stay there and like find, I would be upset with her, or I would be like, so I just think I just love this conversation, because you're right. It goes into like just whether or not we're going to succeed at anything or actually enjoy our life. Like you can get to a health goal, you can get to any goal and just be like stuck in that cycle of like, oh, I got to do
Then
it
you're
again.
going to find the next one, right? You're
Right.
going to set the next goal. I mean, whatever it is. And if you're home with your daughter and you're anxious, which I get this feeling of like, oh, that kitchen is driving me crazy, right? Like, I need to get the dishes. Um, the dishes are going to get done. Like, they're
Always.
not just going to
You
pile
have
forever.
to. You need to eat those
You're
off of
you're
something.
one that does dishes. So if it's driving you crazy, it's not going to wait for too long.
Right.
But would you actually enjoy the moment if you engaged and played with her until she found her either nap time or was in playing, or playing with water while you did the dishes or something like that? Okay, what really needs to get done here? Like, because then you feel like, oh, am I wasting my time by sitting on the floor playing with my daughter? Do I think that that's a waste of time? Like,
yes. Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
there's something in you that is feeling like I could be doing something like not better, but more productive.
Right. Right.
Productivity that, oh my God, the productivity hack.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think,
oh.
so what's what you're saying, like, so we say we have these values, right? And I talk about this with clients too, just like, what are you want to make goals in line with your values. And so I value my family, I value all this. And then you're doing these actions that are really not in line with that. So say, for example, it's like, I value being home with my daughter, getting to see her grow, playing with her. But then if I keep busying myself with all this other stuff, whether it's with business or with, stuff around the house or these other things, it's like, am I really honoring that value? Or is there another value at play, which is okay to have another value, right? So it's okay to be like, I want to work or whatever, but it's just like, it can just be, we can have those competing actions, and if we're never honoring our values, I think that's where the strife comes in. That's where the
100%.
anxiety. And so tell us a little bit about that. Like, okay, we have these values. Well, one, how do we identify what those values really are? Then
values are big.
yeah. And then how do we make actions in line with that so that we feel successful? So we feel like we did a good job with that.
Totally. Well, I think that for one, looking at values is, if you do this work, if you're looking at what are my priorities or my values, be very honest with yourself. No one has to see this because some people will feel like, well, I should be writing family. I should be writing marriage. I should be writing, that is, like you said, where you get these anxieties or frustrations because you're saying let's say marriage is my highest priority, yet you are staying at work late or taking on new projects. And you feel bad about that. But if you're honest with yourself and you say, right now in my career is the most important, then suddenly you're not saying you don't care about your marriage, but you're simply identifying right now this is what's most important to my time. If it's going to come between the two, I'm more often going to choose an advancement in work, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. So I think for one, when we list priorities, this is very helpful, is to list your priorities for the year, because it's going to make you get a little more specific, but you have this maybe big value or priority. I kind of use them interchangeably, but let's say if you say my priorities are family, my health, and my career. Those are huge categories. But if you say, what is my priority this year for my health? Well, this year I'm having a baby. So it is a healthy pregnancy and healthy postpartum recovery. Last year, that was not the case. Last year, we were trying to get pregnant, so it was more fertility. Next year, it's going to get, building back up my core just to feel comfortable in my body, and, you can go to the chiropractor more often to get into a good place where I feel good and confident and comfortable and strong, not for the physical looks, but just to feel good after having a baby, after this huge event of pregnancy. So all of that falls under health. But when we look at this year, it kind of narrows it down more and it kind of helps you focus. If you say, my career is most important or my career is the priority, well, what about your career is most important this year? If you're having a baby, well, maybe it's okay, I'm just trying to stay status quo and kind of keep the business going. I'm not really looking for growth this year. Maybe that's next year. And so when we're honest with that, it kind of helps us shift into, well, what actions align with those things, right? And just like you kind of alluded to, if we've got what we thought were our values, what we thought were our priorities, and we're looking at the actions we're taking and it's not lining up, we'll see what needs to change. Is it the priority that needs to change, or is it the action? Because if you're like, these actions feel good, okay, maybe you have different priorities this year, and that's fine. But if it's the priorities and your actions aren't aligning with it, it's the actions that need to change. I always recommend when you're doing an exercise like this is to limit it to 3. Especially, I'm sure people that listen to your podcast are probably more the overachiever type, right? So you're going to want to list like 12 things. List 3 priorities, get specific for the year, and then list 1 to 3 actions for each one. So if you say my health, let's see, like when we were trying to get pregnant, and I would say my health and my fertility is important this year. Well, I was making sure I was going to acupuncture. That had shown to really help with my cycle. I had taken the cardio down. I was making sure I was like really focused on proteins and healthy fats, and sleep. So these were specific things. I mean, those things do help with anything, but it was definitely my priority. If my priority this year was to get back into running and run a marathon, then those would be different actions, totally different actions for that. But you want kind of to be more specific. And so what happens with that is when you're planning your week or when you're making those decisions, right? Can you take on this new project? You're like, building my career is not the priority this year. I'm trying to just like be home with my family more and stay at the level I'm at. Well, then it makes it easier to say, no, I'm not going to take that on right now. It's more important to me when I look at my year to be home for dinner every night. And maybe in 2 years, that's flipped. I spent last year really making sure I was very present with my family, whatever the age everyone is. And this year I'm looking to maybe get a promotion or branch out on my own. So yes, I'm going to take that new project. That makes it an easier yes. And there's not that guilt. I should be home with my family. Well, you've defined building this career is definitely a priority. Not like you're leaving everyone in the dust, but when it comes to those smaller decisions and actions, it makes it a little more clear.
And I love that, because I think what you're saying is like, yeah, we have these 3 priorities, but there's kind of sometimes one that is like the focus. But even when you have these other 3, you have to watch, how do they come together? How do they work together? So say for me, if it's like family, or it's like health, family, and career, it's like, those are all 3, like my priority this year. But similarly to you, I'm having a baby. So even within my year, my priority might be stronger. So like for the 3 or 4 months leading up to having a baby and after, it's like health and family, but still doing the career. But it's just like, it's what I'm doing, the actions may be different, or how much the actions may be different. So it's not like you forget everything else, but what you're saying, it's like, which one becomes the main one in that, even within that year, in the different pockets of the year. And when you realize that, and when you like settle on that, you have to almost keep reminding yourself that's okay.
It's good to write it down. It's good.
Right.
And like we were talking about before we started recording, there's going to be other people that are doing it differently, right? I think about with my running, I used to do marathons, and I still love running very much. I don't want to do marathons right now.
Yeah.
I have the 4-year-old. The thought of going out for 15 miles and coming home to full-time parent doesn't sound enjoyable as it did when it was going out for 15 miles, coming home, taking a shower, taking a nap.
Yes.
It was different. Now, there are plenty of women running marathons that have a 6-month-old, and are loving it. And that's great. That's not what I want to do. I want to, my running goal is to be able to get out once or twice a week when the baby's here.
So it's almost what you're saying is like, what I hear you saying is like, okay, this is the strategy part, right? Like write your values, your priorities, all that. But the mindset piece, which I know you also care a lot about, is like reminding yourself that like, it's okay, and writing it down, and like, this is your plan. And so what would you say are some tips? Like, so say if we both do this, like, okay, we're both like, okay, like maternity leave, we just want to be present and heal. But then we're both like tempted to be like, we look on Instagram and we see each other and maybe you're like, oh, they're doing this. Oh, I should be doing this, and that comparison, or even sometimes comparison isn't the reason why we do that. We just allow ourselves to like go back into that achiever mode. What are some mindset like tips or things that we can do to kind of keep reminding ourselves like, nope, this is the priority. This is the value. It's okay to do this.
Checking in with how that feels. If it's like, oh, well, I actually miss creating this content or something. Okay, maybe things need to shift. But if it's like, oh, I want to be able to put this out there, a good kind of test is if you were going to do whatever the thing is you're thinking of, whatever it is you're comparing to, or just kind of, oh, I should be doing X, Y, Z. If you couldn't tell anyone, if no one knew you were doing this thing, would it still matter to you? Would you still want to do it? So that is a kind of a big telltale. It's like, oh, well, if I do this and no one would know, well, what would be the point? Versus, well, that would still feel really good.
Yeah.
That's kind of a sign of, okay, it's kind of like, to what end? Okay, let's say I start doing this. Let's say I start, I don't know, I made my own bread last year and it's great. I did it for like a year. I started it again, and after 3 weeks, I'm like, I just like baking. I don't need to be tied to the schedule and making sure I'm using the starter and all of that. And I was comparing to myself. Well, I did it last year, and I was like, well, it was fun last year, and it's not fun now.
Yeah.
So, to what end am I doing that? What is the purpose of this? Like, what am I getting out of this? For the bread thing, it was like, well, I like baking, so I thought I might want to do this again. Well, I could just bake when I want to bake. And so it's a very small thing, but it's just going to show, hey, this is in my own like siloed house and no one knows I'm doing this. What is the point of me doing this? What am I getting from it? Is this a stress? Is this adding a stress to I need to fit this in? Or is it like, man, that would be really fun to try. That would be really fun to do. I miss doing X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just a good, your gut is going to know.
Yeah.
And it might take trying it out. Honestly, it might be like, oh, I see someone doing this. How would that fit in my schedule? And if it's like, well, it could fit in here, let me try that for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And maybe like, oh, I did miss this. Or I know this does feel fun. Great. Okay.
Right.
But if you're like, after 2 weeks, you're like, I don't know where I'm going to put this in. Okay, let it go. So it is trial and error, I think, a lot of, we see something that looks appealing, but try it on for you. Picture how this action is going to look in your schedule, in your life. And is that a stress or is it a relief?
Right. Yeah, I think that's really good because, there's this program that this kind of business program I wanted to do that happens once a year that doTERRA offers. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it's happening in the summer. And literally when I'm having the baby. And I just was like, no, I shouldn't do it, And then I'm like, but it would be so like fun and have accountability. And so I remember telling my husband, he's like, no, he's like, usually like, you can do whatever you want. I believe, trust in you, whatever. He's like, you told me last time. So this is even the accountability part. You told me last time you didn't want to do much. Like, and if you wanted to do something, you wanted to just do it because you felt like doing it. What you're saying, that trial and error versus having to. And he's like, I don't think you should do it. And I'm like, I know, but let me just see. And then, some different things happen. I was like, yeah, I shouldn't. You're totally right. Yeah, and it's
have
just
a sounding board.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think that's what helps me in this season. And it could be spouse, it could be a friend, it could be a coach, it could be just a community member, whatever. Just having someone when you're having these goals, like telling them and them to like hold you accountable to it, which sometimes we don't want to do because we want to do whatever we want to do. So
Yep.
But having that sounding board and, even if you still tell them like, okay, but I just want to try it. And they'll be like, okay, well, just come back to me after a week or two and see how, and we can test it. See how you feel.
It's excellent to have when we're setting and this is what I always talk about with goal setting, is to have guideposts.
Right.
Okay, this is my goal is to, let's go back to kind of like, career versus family, which is, I wish it wasn't like that, but it often comes down to
right.
That, right? Which one? Definitely doesn't have to be, you got to find your own kind of balance. But if you're saying, okay, I want to, with these actions, we're making them more specific. I want to be home for dinner, maybe to me, being with my family more and making them a priority means being home for dinner, having dinner with them 5 nights a week, whatever your number. So your guidepost is, okay, if 2 weeks in a row I'm home 4 nights or less, that's the sign that, okay, something is amiss
Mm-hmm.
and I need to kind of recalibrate. So to be able to check in before it gets to be like, oh God, I forgot I made that action and now it's been 3 months and I've only been home 3 nights a week. So you have that check. Oh, it's been 2 weeks and I haven't hit my 5. What's going on?
Right.
So before you kind of totally backslide
Mm-hmm.
and make these actions, you can reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's changing the action, which is fine, but it kind of prevents you from completely slipping and, oh, it's been 6 months and I haven't done the thing.
Yeah.
Right. So the guidepost for that is, okay, let me check in 2 weeks and see how this feels.
Mm.
Instead of just like, oh, I've actually been miserable for months. I'm just kind of like forcing it because it's a sunk cost and I keep doing it. Right.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. I like, yeah, the idea of checking in. Because I think often when we do set goals, we're like, once I say it, I have to do it. So
That
sometimes we
this
don't even say it or write it down so we know we're going to do it. But then it's like, it's okay to change your mind. It's totally okay.
trial and error. I mean, everything with goal setting, I think with the like goals and actions to get to the goal, it's totally trial and error. Okay, you've
Mm-hmm.
got this goal and you think that these are the actions that are going to get you there, and maybe it's not.
Right.
Especially when it's something more vague. I had a client that hers was it was more like the self-care aspect. And for one of the actions, and she was printing out the sheet that had like 3 actions, and she put a weekly bath. She's like, I haven't really been doing that this month. I did one. I'm not looking forward to it. It's like, okay. I was like, well, do you look forward? Do you look forward to taking the bath? Is it enjoyable? She's like, not really. I'm like, okay, well, you tried it and it sounded like it might get you to the goal, but it's not. So you can erase it. She was like, what? And it was like, well, what will I put in its place? Like, you don't have to. You're doing these 2 other things. Does that feel good? If it does, great, you found your self care.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that thing of like, hey, my goal is to maybe be more mindful. So I'm going to try meditation. But oh my gosh, I'm like kind of dreading it. I haven't really
Mm-hmm.
found a rhythm that works for me. But I do love when I go for walks with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you thought that it was going to be meditation that would get you to this kind of incorporating more mindfulness, but it turns out just maybe not listening to a podcast while you walk the dog and just walking the dog quietly is what gets you there. So
Right.
it's really looking at what are you already doing?
Yeah, it's kind of like that
Maybe you
habit
don't need
stacking,
to add
right?
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's actually taking away something. And I think what I hear you saying even through this whole conversation is just continuing, not always looking to someone else to give us permission, but permission to ourselves to
Mhm.
set goals, set them aligned with what we really want, really, really value and is our priority, and be okay with shifting it. Be okay with saying like, oh, I started like, saying I wanted to do a bath every week, but I actually don't really want to. So I don't, it's like, that's okay. Like
You
find some
didn't
other way.
fail.
Yeah. But
No
I think
one
that's the
cares.
thing is that we've told ourselves our feel. So especially when women
I'm
are
not
starting to get
kidding.
healthy, the
Mhm.
first thing they do is like, I got to fix my diet. I got to fix how much I exercise. And then it's like this all or nothing thing where they're like, okay, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. So I'm just not going to do anything, or I failed, or all this sort of stuff where it's like, no, that just wasn't working for you. So let's just troubleshoot,
Yeah.
you
Or
know?
that didn't work this week.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's very true.
this was a busy week. Maybe you were sick. Maybe you were traveling. Maybe
Right.
work got crazy, whatever. But, it's the average. And we know this. This isn't new news,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to be reminded of it constantly.
Right.
I mean, all the time with like yoga, it's like usually I'll do like 45 to an hour. And I wanted to do a longer walk today. It's like, oh, do I still have time to fit in yoga? Like, well, I could do 30 minutes instead of 50.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. That's an option. And I can still do yoga.
And even
So,
what you're saying, like
oh,
if you decided like, hey, I'm not going to do it today because I did a longer walk, the win was like you chose to move your body very close to the end of your pregnancy. Like that's the win. So
I
I
did
think
what felt good. Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
right. So I
totally.
think that's like obviously there's a time and place to like make sure you're doing certain things because the yoga probably really helps with your body right now, all that sort of stuff. But I think what I hear you saying is just permission to like do what is literally going to help you be whole and thrive, not just in one area, but these areas that you're saying are important. And physically, when we take care of our health, we don't just do it so we can have a rock star body or whatever. We do it so we can live a long life, have energy to do the other things that we love to do, whether that's family, whether that's career, whether that's sewing, whether that's knitting, whether that's baking, and just being okay that it's not perfect, which I think is hard for us little cheapers over here.
What's the bigger goal? Like, what's the purpose of doing this?
Yeah, I love that.
Like, why do I want to do this?
Right.
Am I still achieving that through, maybe it's a different action than I thought, or maybe it's less often than I thought. Whatever that is, it's, well, what was the point of me doing this? I think that all the time with kids. Yesterday I was like, oh, we can do, tree rubbing. Like, it was, we put paper on the tree, he hadn't done before. I'm like, we can do different parts. And he loves to print. Like, well, we can type Owen's tree rubbing and we'll print it out. And so in my head, I'm like, this will be just a small line at the top. And he made the font like 100. I'm like, well, now there's not a lot of room for the tree rubbing. And I just stopped myself. I'm like, who the hell cares? He's having fun. We're going out. The purpose of this is to do something together. If he does it in an inch square of the entire paper, what does it matter? I was like, you know what? I was like, yes, that made you happy. Let's go print it and we'll go outside. That's the purpose. That's the entire purpose. It doesn't have to be what's in my head. So it definitely translates to parenting all the time of parenting, what is the point of us doing this?
Right. Yeah. And I just think, I was talking to some other mom friends and just being like, if we don't catch ourselves, not only as women can we easily compare in other areas of our life, but especially when you become a parent, you just compare how you do things, you compare your kid. And then I think we're getting to that point where we're like, I can't do that. My kid's different. Our life is different, but it's the same thing. And now, and I'll transfer that back to your own health and your own life. It's like, my life is different. My goals are different. And so I just love this conversation because I just think it's something that, even when we were talking about, we need to be reminded of as we enter this different season of life with 2 kids versus 1, and just having to remind ourselves, like, it's going to look different. So even what may have worked for us postpartum last time may not work this time,
Oh, 100%. I think that's a big thing when we look at values and we look at priorities is for, not only this year, but this season of life. I volunteered a lot when, before kids, when it was all my time. It does not mean that I don't value volunteering. It means right now I'm not doing it as much. I do it occasionally. It is not like a weekly thing. And that's okay because my kids aren't going to be little forever. Soon they'll be able to come with me and it'll pick back up. So it's going to ebb and flow. And it doesn't mean that's not a value of yours anymore. It doesn't mean it's not important to you. It means, hey, this is taking a backseat. And it may be for 10 years that it takes a backseat.
Right.
I mean, I think when I think about running, I took off the whole time I was pregnant with my first, just to kind of reevaluate how much do I love running, how much was restriction. Turned out I do love it and I did miss it. I'm not doing a ton now. And then I, think, well, 5 years down the road from now, I will be running and racing more. And there's people that didn't start running until they were 50, and it's a huge part of their life.
Right.
So I've had this huge running life, and it will come back. This is just a season, even if it's 8 years, where it's taking a back burner. I'm just going once or twice a week instead of 5 times. But maybe I'll be back there. And you know what? Maybe I won't. But instead of thinking, well, I've got to kind of, I was doing 5 times a week, I need to get back there. No, I don't. I don't need to do that right now. It's fine.
Yeah, it's also, I think what you're saying, the longevity of our lives, right? Not just like even within a year or within a time period. Like, I mean, yes, tomorrow's not promised, but like just trusting that you're going to do whatever you need to do and want to do when the time is right, and being okay with that. So I love this. I love this so much. So, as we wrap up, is there like one major or like one piece of tip or encouragement that you want to share to the women around this topic?
Oh God. I think the biggest thing, and it helps me to remind myself, is there's not one way to live your life. There's so many different ways. And think of how bizarre it would be if we were all doing the same way. And that just makes it just highlights how crazy that would be. And no, of course you got to find your own way, because if everyone is doing the same thing, I mean, God, how boring. And of course there's not just one script that you follow. If you can think about, it helps if you can think about someone in your life that that is doing something totally opposite from you,
Mm-hmm.
and be like, do I think any less of them?
Right.
No. That is really helpful to think of, oh, right, I'm just doing my thing my own way and they're doing their own thing. And I do not measure them on the scale that I'm measuring myself
Yeah. That's so good. You're right. It would be weird if we were like mechanically
as.
doing all the same things.
Right. And by this stage you do this, and
Yeah.
then this is where you're in and this is your type of career. It's like, no, of course not.
And I think at one point in society, that was the case where everyone, you get married by this a certain amount of time, whatever. And so you just feel like if you don't follow these unsaid rules that society
Yeah.
gives us, you're not living your life or you're not living up to par. And I just love what you're saying. Like literally we're now more than ever, we're exposed to the fact that everyone's doing it differently because we can easily see and we're easily connected. So just being okay, like asking that question, like, how do I want to live my life? What are my priorities? What are my values?
What are you going to do with your time that makes
Yes. So good. Well, if people wanted to connect with you, where can they find you? If you have a free resource or your blog or website or social media, feel free to share with that with us now.
For sure. So my website is Simplywell Coaching, simplywellcoaching.com. And if it's your first time, they're going to get a pop-up that is 21 days to gratitude. So it's all these different small actions you can do each day that will kind of bring you some calm, peace, and happiness. Very simple things. I'm on Instagram at Simplywell Coaching, although I've been taking a hiatus. But there's still great content on there. And once the baby's here, we'll see.
Right. Yes.
I will see your messages. I'm just not posting as much.
Right.
So connect with me there. I have a group. I have a membership. It's called the Oasis Collaborative. And so it's a small group. I started it in December, but it's been really fun. We have, there's a monthly focus, which is just a simple quote each month that we'll kind of check in on. We're on Slack, so we're off social media. Slack is our communications. And then we have a community call at the end of the month to discuss, hey, how did this quote come up for you? Because what I find is we get these great tidbits, like you'll listen to this podcast and have this great feeling, and then next week it's totally gone. Right. So the idea is to have this one quote that we kind of keep kind of mulling over for an entire month. And then we come together as a community and share, how did you take this at first? How did this change for you? How did it come up through the month? Like, how does this apply to you specifically? And it's fun because sometimes we'll have people like, oh, I didn't take it that way at all, to get these different perspectives. But we also do spotlight coaching. So I'll do a free 30-minute coaching session, and just to be a kind of a resource and support to each other, that accountability.
Nice. I love the name, Oasis Collaborative.
Yeah,
yes.
It's supposed to be like a little getaway. So all the information in that is on my website.
Oh, so great. Well, thank you so much. I took a lot of notes and, just even away, like, just reflecting a lot from myself in this season of life. And again, the stuff that you shared could be applied to any area of health, any area of life. And so I really hope, ladies, if you're listening, to really, get in touch with Samantha, follow her, but share with both of us, just like, what were your takeaways? What are you going to do? What's going to be different in your life now, based off of this podcast? So thank you again so much for Samantha for joining us.
Thank you.
Awesome. Wow. I really hope you're leaving this episode just excited, breathing a breath of relief and just saying, oof, I don't have to do all things. No, you don't. You need to just start creating goals and doing things that are really in line with your values and priorities in this season, because it can shift, right? And I just think Samantha shared so many great stuff. So make sure you take notes, go back and listen, check out her resources, and then make sure, if you want some support from me, either from a coaching point of view or an essential oils point of view, please check out my resources below. Would love to hop on a clarity call with you to see how I can support you in your mindset and habits in life. And then if you're wanting to use oils, even share oils, would love to hop on an essential oils call with you as well. So feel free to check out the links to that, book a time. If you don't find a time, please message me on Instagram or Facebook at Madewell Women, and we can find a time for you. Okay. All right. See you. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Madewell Women podcast and enjoyed whether it was me and a solo episode or my guest thoughts on really how to help you live a healthy life and to be made well. But before you go, I want to make sure you know you're not alone. These podcasts are meant to be inspirational. They're meant to support you as you're going about your daily life. But where I have found the most transformation is one-on-one support, but also community. So make sure you join the Madewell Women's Health community, where you can process this podcast and get support in whatever aspect of a Madewell journey you're on. And also make sure you follow me on Instagram, because there you're going to also be able to see behind the scenes and just how I live my own Madewell woman life. All right. Can't wait to support you. Can't wait to get to know you more. And again, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please rate, review it. Let me know how it was for you. And the more people that rate and review the podcast, the more women that could see it. All right. That's it. Bless you. And I'll see you on the next episode.